Good evening, everyone. Mike here, founder of Magnus, coming to you on this beautifully cold Michigan day on Thursday. Today is the 29th, January. Today I'm joined by the one and only Luke Premo. How you doing today, Luke?
Good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. We're going to make sure that my audio and my internet connection works great today. Last time it was a little choppy, but we're going to hope for the best. So,
Right.
So, just want to what's that?
I was just gonna say, I can't believe it that January is almost over. It feels like the new year is still just getting started.
I'm still getting over the New Year's holiday.
Right. It's crazy time.
Yeah, so glad to have everyone here today. If you're watching live, you can feel free to drop any chats in the boxes below, and we will respond to them live on air. Today is our monthly Fireside Chat. It's more of an easygoing webinar, live stream. We kind of cover a topic, and then we discuss some stuff that's happened at Magnus. These are meant to be conversational. There's no slides, no pitches, no sales deck, nothing like that. We answer the questions live on air, and the replay is always available. So what is our topic we going for today, Luke?
The main topic we're going to cover is our backups killing your clients' networks, which I've definitely seen tickets come in about that, and it's definitely an important issue to address because it's not one you may think of off the top of your head when you're setting up backups.
Yeah, definitely. We see quite a few topics or quite a few tickets come in regarding backups where every now and then an MSP will report to us that, hey, this backup is causing the client's network to go slow. And so sometimes backups, even though they are meant there for your client's protection and to become their disaster recovery plan, sometimes they could be secretly killing your client's network. And so we're going to kind of go over some tips, tricks, things to look out for. And it's almost an issue that never gets reported.
Right. Exactly. It's honestly the only time you probably ever notice the issue is if it actually happens to your client's network. So obviously you want to try to catch it beforehand.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, if a client, normally 9 times out of 10, they'll report out saying, hey, my internet or my connection's going slow, or hey, my computer is going slow. And the first thing you start thinking about is, oh, well, maybe they're doing a lot of bandwidth utilization, or maybe there's something else going on, like my phone going off for a spam call.
Lovely.
I got to put that in my show notes to make sure I silence my phone. But yes, I mean, it could be anything from a bandwidth utilization issue to the hardware on the endpoint can't handle it. Backups are usually invisible. And normally what happens is the client will either silently just deal with the issue, being frustrated, or they'll reach out to you as the MSP, and you may even get blamed for it. And it's one of those things that that you need to check into if their client is saying that they're having some kind of a slowness period, especially like the time of day and the duration of the slowness. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit more here.
Yeah, I know there's certainly some people that have slower connections, even businesses. A lot of people might think that businesses have fast and reliable internet. In a lot of cases, that's true, but I know that we know a couple of MSPs that have clients that are super rural, in super rural areas. Like I think there's like a factory, and they've got huge buildings and whatnot, but obviously with it being in such a rural location, their internet, I think, is only like 50 megs up and down. So yeah, definitely can cause some issues, especially if you have a lot of other stuff running on it at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's like, it feels like it's more aggressive today than it used to be. And I think that a lot of that comes down to is that MSPs and companies traditionally used to have windows of downtime. And in today's day and age, in 2026, a lot of those workloads are getting to be larger data sets. They are on 24/7, like you mentioned, a factory, they may have people working 24/7 and on a 50 meg connection up and down, and being a very rural area that has no cell phone signal. Trust me, I've been there. If you have, let's say, 50 computers that are trying to do backups all at the same time, the backup is the silent killer of what's killing your network. and other things. I mean, there's a few other situations as well that could be causing those issues, right, Luke?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you've got a bunch of backups running at the same time, even if they're not, especially if you're using a product like ours, Magnus Box, which deduplicates based on previous backups, if you've got a bunch of computers going at the same time, even relatively small backups will be causing issues. And having all of those upload at the exact same time, especially where upload speeds are generally slower than download speeds in most cases, can really cause some issues.
Yeah, and it's really, you're just competing for that network traffic. I mean, yeah, you might have the best network switches in your client's network, 10 gig, SFP plus, fiber backbones. But I mean, it's the bandwidth. If it's, you got people that are nowadays are working remotely, connecting to networks. You got data syncing to the cloud 24/7. And then you got backups that are overlapping, your production workloads for your clients. And I mean, really, is there such thing as a downtime period, and what is the best time to schedule those backups for?
Right. And I think that's a really big part of it is spacing out your backups if you can. If you have 50 computers, like Mike was saying, even if you're not able to space each one of those out to where they're running at one individually at a time, if you can even batch those into like 10 at a time, that's going to limit your how much the devices are using on the network by 5 times. So even a small reduction in how many are running at the same time can really make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And like Luke mentioned, batching those workstations. And so we see it a lot with Magnus Box. And it's not just isolated to a Magnus Box issue as well. It can be any vendor. And we try to make these Fireside Chats a little more vendor agnostic so we can provide you with good information so you can use it with your own backup solution, even if you're not with Magnus Box. But I mean, it's always good to, we would see it where an MSP would be having all their backups trigger at 8 o'clock at night. Well, I mean, if they're still working and you have we keep going back to the 50, we're just going to standardize for this Fireside Chat 50 devices. So if you have 50 devices and they're all triggering at 8 o'clock, that's going to be a bandwidth or a throttle. It's going to throttle or a bottleneck. Wow. It's going to be a bottleneck for your network. And so you're going to want to try to space out those backups. And something that we have here at Magnus Box is we have the ability to say, hey, I want my backups to run at 8 o'clock. And then we have a setting where you can actually have it change that by like 15 minutes or whatever time. You can have it delay randomly for every backup schedule. And so it can help spread out that backup workload. And like Luke mentioned as well, having something like deduplication where you're not backing up the full file set every single time. I know for us at Magnus Box, it's called data chunking, or also commonly known as change block tracking, where you're only backing up the change data sets instead of a full entire backup every single time. And it's just a few tips like that for your backup software where you can really start to optimize those workloads.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned the random job delay, because that's really a one quick fix that can really just almost magically erase the problem, because those jobs are randomly triggering and being spaced out. Number one, it doesn't really take a lot of work to do because you can mass apply it to all of your devices. But number two, it still accomplishes what a lot of people are looking to accomplish, which is getting backups around the same time and at night. If you don't have a lot of downtime, you obviously don't have a lot of time for backups to run. If your customers going from, let's say, like 6 a.m. in the morning to like 12 p.m. at night, that only gives you 6 hours to run. Again, going back to the 50 device example, 50 backups in 6 hours, which may seem like a lot of time, but if these backups, even if they're only being only uploading the new changes, that can still take a long time. And I think another big thing, and again, not trying to toot the horn too much for Magnus Box here, but I think something big, if your backup provider doesn't do deduplication or object tracking, I would definitely recommend switching, especially if you're having network issues, switching to a backup provider that has that feature.
Definitely. And I mean, outside of the network, I mean, we're picking on the network a lot because we always love to blame the network, but sometimes it's not even the network. I mean, there's also issues with the endpoints as well. And back to the whole you have an on 24/7 operation for a client that you're supporting. I mean, the endpoints, the workstations, laptops, the servers, those could also have bottlenecks as well. And I mean, like I said, I'm going to not pick on the network because I got to be nice to the network engineers. But you could have things like the computer can only handle so much traffic at one time, or you have something like an I/O issue with the hard drives. And so with SSDs becoming more mainstream, the input output of a storage device has gotten more efficient. But I/O, and for those of you that don't know what I/O is, it's how fast a storage can respond when something asks to read or write to a disk or read the data. And so if you have someone that's running an application in production and then you're trying to back up all this data and not doing like change block tracking, or you're doing a full backup, you could really hurt the performance of that disk. And people may blame it on the network, but at the same time, it's just the endpoint can't handle that throughput.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because I've seen that in a lot of tickets before too, where partners will send something in and maybe the backup job isn't failing because the network is crashing or they can't connect to it, but because, maybe too much RAM is being used or memory. And so when you have a bunch of different processes maybe running at the exact same time, then that can also cause issues that are outside the network, but still obviously a similar result, failed backup. So that's another thing we try to recommend doing too, is running the backups when nothing else is running. It's possible to run a backup while other stuff is running, but if it's an older or slower computer, then you might experience issues if there's a lot of different things running at the same time.
Yeah, like Luke mentioned, there's sometimes you have to make sure that your backups can be optimized. I know that for Magnus Box, we still support Windows Server 2012 R2 and some older operating systems. And so there's times where we have to make some adjustments and set some specific settings flags to say, hey, don't use the hard drive or don't use the memory for caching, use the hard drive temp files for caching, or we need to throttle the traffic or the bandwidth of the transfer during specific times of the day. And so having a backup solution that can handle those requests and those workloads and make those adjustments can help alleviate some pain points that your clients can see. And I am a huge proponent of having backups of your client's data. I'm huge for it because obviously we're a backup solution. But at the same time, like, you also got to make sure that the customer experience or the client experience is up there, because if there's anything that is causing them any kind of pain points like latency issues, the computer is slow and you go to click, I mean, that affects you, and they're going to blame the computer, the network, or the MSP itself, and that's your reputation on the line.
Right. It really doesn't matter whether it's the network or the computer itself. If it's a computer issue or a technology issue, you're getting blamed 100%, because these are people that hire you just to work with their technology. And so whether it truly is your fault or not, yeah, you're probably going to shoulder some of that blame. And kind of going back to what Mike mentioned earlier, at least for Common, I'm sure Magnus Box and plenty of other different backup providers, they offer really good support for older devices. I think I was checking in for a client one day, and we have support for Windows Server 2008. I mean, that's almost a 20-year-old operating system now, and obviously it's nice to have support for that for people that still have it. And I'm sure MSPs know it's sometimes you can't get clients to upgrade even if you do it for free, but obviously a downside to supporting such old devices is that even if everything's running perfectly, it still just might not be enough depending on the capabilities of the older machines.
Yeah, and I hear it a lot of times in the MSP groups. Well, oh, your client's still running Server 2008, or hey, your client's still running Windows XP. Now, by the way, we don't support Windows XP. But because Magnus Box is still an MSP, we still have a few of our clients from back in the old days. there's times where they don't have a choice to upgrade. We've seen it before, like auto body shops, where their alignments tool to see if the frames are aligned on vehicles, they're running Windows XP. And I mean, there was one time we had one that failed at the local body shop here in town, and they were quoted $4,000 to upgrade it. And I'm all for, people are going to say, oh, they should have been putting away money for it. But at the same time, sometimes you just got to do what's best for your client and just try to make sure that they have an option available. Obviously MSPs are going to be telling to, hey, sign a contract saying they're not responsible for this. But I mean, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for your client. And that helps build that relationship with them. The solution isn't always to just slap in new hardware either. So sometimes you have to support older equipment.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And that's a really good point to think about, Mike, is that there's just a lot of software out there, especially for trades. Like I know I went to my dentist office and I think they're still running Windows XP. And it's like that software is tried and true and it works fine. And sometimes you just don't have an option if whatever hardware devices they're using outside of that or the specific software just doesn't support newer operating systems. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes that's just the reality of the situation. So that's why it's especially important to have backups, because in the I don't want to say unlikely for a device that old, in the somewhat likely scenario that those devices fail, you certainly want to make sure that you have backups available for when they do eventually fail, whether it be the entire device or the hard drive, to make sure you have that data. And, while the upgrade cost may be super expensive to get a new computer, at least they still have their data, because it would suck if they were stuck with, like Mike said, a $4,000 bill on top of losing all of their data.
Yeah, especially to upgrade a Windows XP machine, $4,000. That was crazy. And by the way, it was an easy fix. I just had to reseat a stick of memory. So it was a super easy fix. They were super happy. They actually paid quite a bit, because they're like, you saved us $4,000. And so I think they actually paid us like 2 times our normal standard labor fee.
That's awesome. That's a good way to get some extra money in.
I know. But on top of that, if you have a client, skipping back to the network so you can pick on the networks a little bit more. If you do have a client that has a super slow internet connection, like 50 megs up and down. I mean, out here back in the day when I was running my MSP full time, it was Frontier, and it was like 8 megs down and 8 megs up if you're lucky, and it's perfect day outside. And so this is where having an on-site backup and a cloud backup is advantageous, because you can have daily backups going to your local storage, and then like have a weekly if they do have off hours, pushing that data up to the cloud. And then that way you have that 3-2-1 backup in place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really important to have. And like Mike said, you don't want to keep picking on the network, but that's definitely a big source of issues, especially in rural areas, which we're very familiar with, being in a pretty rural area.
I don't have any neighbors, so I trust I'm as rural as it gets right now.
Right, exactly.
So flipping back to hard drives a little bit more and hardware, hard drives will get slower before they fail. I don't know why my screen keeps flickering, so I'll have to fix that next time. It did that last time too, Luke. Hopefully it's not flickering for everyone else. But the drives will get slower before they fail. I mean, especially if you still have people on spinners. I don't see spinning hard drives in consumer end products very often. But a lot of times hard drives will start to get way slower before they'll even fail. And that can impact backup speeds as well. Because I mean, Magnus is not built to monitor hard drive health, but I've seen it time and time again. We just had one come in like 2 weeks ago where this a Magnus Box partner sent us a log like, hey, what's this error in my backups log? And it was like a cycle redundancy error, I believe it was. I can't remember the exact word, but it's like, we're not a hard drive monitoring solution, but I've seen it many times, like a lot of times over the past 8 years, where we have told an MSP that their client's hard drive failing before they were alerted by their RMM tool that it was failing smart. And so we were able to say, hey, you may want to stop backups for a moment, get a solid backup, stop them, and go out there and tell your client their hard drive will fail. It's not a matter of if it's going to fail, it's when their hard drive is going to fail.
Yeah, and there are some limited tools in Magnus box that will report when there's issues with the hard drive. But like Mike said, if they're servicing in the job logs, it's not a matter of when, it's if, or other way around, not if, but when.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you see those stuff surfacing, it's time to get on it for sure. Hopefully, if you're seeing them, it's not too late, but oftentimes, sadly, it is even sometimes too late if you start seeing those in the job logs.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, a backup job will kind of stress the hard drive out. I mean, even if you're doing change block tracking or doing a full disk backup, no matter what, the software, whatever software you're using, has to check every sector on that hard drive. And so if you have a spinning hard drive and it's got a lot of errors going on and retries, it's going to increase your latency. It might not trip an alert on your RMM system, but latency definitely becomes noticeable with a backup when it's running, because it puts it under a load. And so a drive doesn't have to be dead to be a problem. So it's a good thing to keep an eye on those. I know that there's some SSDs that will last a really long time, and there's others that they're dead out of the box. They die a month or two later, and it's just materials and quality workmanship, and making sure you use higher quality. And that, like I said, it doesn't always mean that they're not going to fail. But back in the day, it was the spinning Western Digital Blues. You can get them dirt cheap, like $40-50. But you knew in a year that your client was going to keep having issues with the I/O latency.
Right. I mean, obviously it's not always feasible, especially if it's built into the computer itself. But I mean, I would 100% recommend going to SSDs if possible. It's not that they can't ever fail either, because they certainly could. But they're a lot less likely, and backups are a lot less harder on them, just because they don't have to, physically spin. There's no moving parts in it. So, if possible, it would always be a good idea, in my opinion, to upgrade to an SSD for your clients, even if it may be more expensive. It's really probably not a matter of may, it probably usually is. But, in recent years, and I don't know if it's been affected by the other supply issues we've been seeing with computer parts like RAM, but it's oftentimes not that much more expensive. So I think the added peace of mind is certainly worth it, in my opinion.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, memory is definitely out of control. I keep watching the memory prices to see if that bubble's going to burst. I know I was just getting a quote on some memory recently, and a 96 gig chip was about $1,600, and a 64 gig stick was about $800. The server was, in like the $5,000 range, and the memory was in like the $30,000 range. And it's just, it has affected from when I just picked up some hard drives recently for our storage clusters. Prices have gone up, and I'm hoping eventually that bubble will burst a little bit. I think that data centers are really pulling a lot of the resources in, and taking up a lot of that supply. And so, everyone's saying buy now, it's going to get higher and higher. But then there's other people saying the bubble will pop, the prices will come down, that AI will slowly start to, trends will start to decline a little bit. But I don't know if that's true or not.
Right. Yeah. Not to get super financial and business newsy, but I mean, I feel like the bubble's got, at least for RAM prices. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's one thing to talk about the stock market, but I mean, I feel like the RAM prices have got to come back down eventually. It just doesn't seem sustainable to me. It doesn't seem like, at least for everyday users. No, I mean, people are just going to stop buying it eventually. I mean, I get, obviously, people that need it because their RAM fails on their computer, or, maybe they're building a new one. But I mean, it just does not seem feasible for the prices to be as high as they are for this long. So we'll see what happens, but it doesn't, I wouldn't say it's going to be super high for very long, at least relatively long.
Yeah. And so just a few things to take out of this conversation on this topic is backup impacts drop when you reduce how much data and I/O you're touching. And just some practical solutions that I came up with. to help reduce that is that incremental backups are always the way to go. There's use cases for having a full backup, but when you need something that you don't want to be like less impact and use less resources on the network and on the workstations and servers themselves, is that just having incremental and blockware backups, having shorter jobs. And so if you're doing incremental backups, running one backup a week will take longer than running 7 daily backups. And you usually have less data that's being changed to have to reconcile up to that. Reducing your snapshot durations, keeping an eye on latency. If you do have a client that's complaining about their computers being slow from a specific time, I mean, check your RMM. You could be running a patch policy at that time. There could be a stuck Windows update, or it could be the backup system. And so that's one of those things that I never used to think about was, oh, your computer's going slow. Oh, well, backup's kicked off today at 10 o'clock. And so I know for us, like for our MSP clients that we have, I sometimes will, 9 times out of 10, I run the backups in the evening and I stagger them if there's gonna be a large amount of data sets. But for the ones that never leave their workstation on, because trust me, you know who they are. They don't leave their computer on no matter how many times you tell them, or it goes to sleep, or they think their computer's on while it's in hibernation. Having your backup system set to backup as soon as it comes online. I know Magnus has that functionality where if their computer missed the last backup job, it'll trigger it within 15 minutes, or scheduling it throughout the day. And just trying to make sure that you design your backups around restores, because you need to also think about the restore aspect, because if you're doing incremental data up to the cloud locally, that's going to be a smaller data set than trying to do a large restore. And so you got to think about the restore impact when you're trying to do that to this computer. You're going to be hitting it with more data. You're going to be using up more bandwidth resources on the networks and the switches. So stuff just to think about.
Right. That's definitely a good point. I don't know if you mentioned this, but also reducing the amount of backups you have in a day. I know some partners do hourly backups, which there's nothing wrong with, especially if they're smaller backups, but that can really put a strain. If you've got 24 backups happening every single day, that's a lot of backups, and a lot of times you got to re-upload, not necessarily re-upload all the same data, but some basic data that has to be up there. And so, reducing that, even if it's every other hour, is, I think, really helpful. And obviously, there's partners and clients that make changes where they do need to be backed up every hour, but oftentimes you can usually catch if a file goes missing or something happens within a couple of hours rather than every single hour.
Yeah, and it's stuff like setting up like retention policies, and like Luke was mentioning, hourly backups. I mean, we one time had a partner that was trying to do backups every 15 minutes, and we're like, whoa, like, what is changing? Like, does your client have that much data changing every 15 minutes? So like, no, like, you have to evaluate with your client. And I'm all for having a cookie cutter solutions and having each client being the exact same, but you have to acknowledge that your clients, all of them are unique. Like, I get trying to standardize procedures and processes, but sometimes you need to ask to your client, what would hurt the most if you lost it tomorrow? What would you do if this data was gone tomorrow? And that's one of the easiest ways we sold backups when we were in MSP, is just straight up ask them, what would you do tomorrow if your data was gone? And 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, we'd have to close shop. We wouldn't be able to function. And it's one of those things, like, you could standardize your deployments, but at the same time, you have to have some give and take for unique scenarios, or, hey, they don't need to be backed up every hour on the hour. Then we can go to dailies. Oh, you don't have much data that changes? Well, we're going to do a weekly. I mean, you've got to determine that risk with your clients and have that open conversation with them and make them part of your discussions and not just assume.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's no problems, at least in my opinion, in talking to your client and asking them what they need and what's appropriate, and getting a better idea, because they may say like, hey, we need backups every hour, but if you really talk to them, maybe it's something you could do every couple of hours. And another thing I think that is important to factor in is the type of backup. So disk image backups usually take longer and they draw in more system power. So those might be backups you probably don't want to run every, hour or so, because number one, they might not need complete in time for the next one to be done. But number two, they take up a lot more resources, and your partners will definitely, or clients will almost certainly notice it during the day when it's running. So those are ones that we recommend probably only doing once a day at max, and maybe depending on how big the backup is, maybe only doing once a week. And so that's a really big thing to factor in, because file folder backups, they can, depending on how large they are, they can also take up some resources too, but they're typically a lot easier on the system.
Yeah, I mean, like for my clients, one of our MSP clients, their file and folder daily backup, it takes 2.5 minutes. And that's average. But then we do a weekly disk image. We'll do like a Saturday, we'll do an on-site disk image to either a external hard drive or an on-site NAS storage device or their server, and then we'll do a cloud backup the next day. And just so we can kind of spread it out. You don't want to do 2 disk images at the exact same time, on-site and off-prem. I mean, it's going to be painful. It's going to hurt, and you're going to affect those resources. I know some backup vendors have like seed loading, where it gets cached to a spot and then it's uploaded over time. That's a cool feature as well. There's only a couple that I know that actually have that functionality, but yeah, it's just trying to do what's best for your client and just try to be able to know what that risk is if that data is gone.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big part you got to factor in is what your clients actually need.
Yeah, and so I don't think we had any much more to cover on that topic. Was there any closing notes you wanted for the main topic?
I think the biggest thing is just to be mindful. Obviously, just keep an eye on what's happening to the network, because it might be dragging it down drastically, but your clients might only ever contact you when it completely goes out. So maybe every once in a while, monitoring the network while a backup is running is probably a good idea, even if your clients aren't saying anything, just because you want to discover an issue before it actually happens. So yeah, I think that's all I had, but yeah.
Trying to fix our images there. I was trying to preload something there, but so the next part of our discussion is we just launched our quarterly feature release.
Yes, very excited about that. Always love when the new quarterly comes out. Usually a couple good features in there.
So Magnus Box, we have our own data center located here in Saginaw, Michigan, and I am a huge user of Proxmox. Like, I live, breathe, and sleep Proxmox for hypervisor and a little bit of VMware outside of here. But Magnus Box version 26.1.0, our newest quarterly, just dropped this week. We're going to be pushing that out to the Magnus Box partner network here in the next couple of days. Just doing some final touches here on the rollout plan. So one of the benefits of Magnus Box is that we make sure that the software is good to go, and we handle the push out to your endpoints. So that way you don't have to go do it. You have to schedule your RMM. We trigger on our end and push it out to our 4,000 plus devices. So this quarterly feature release is focused mainly on Proxmox. And so last month during our last Fireside, Luke and I were talking about Proxmox being in beta. It has finally been released to general availability. It is amazing. Like, Luke's had to listen to me talk about it nonstop. So you can back up containers. You can back up virtual machines on Proxmox. One of the things that is now fixed is that you can now restore to Ceph. So for our Proxmox cluster that we have here at Magnus Box, it's a 3-node cluster, and it's in a Ceph storage array. So each of our hosts have a number of disks that work together in tandem. Highly recommended if you're able to get away with multiple boxes. Definitely the way to go is use Ceph. And so you can now restore VMs and containers back to these Ceph storage buckets. One of the newer features as well is you can now restore. You can now do backups and restores without using a root account. So you can set up a dedicated account for your backups or for your Proxmox backups, and then that way you don't have to give away keys to the kingdom. Change block tracking is supported. So before, during beta, it was full snapshots. It does now the change block tracking, like me and Luke were talking about in the previous segment, was helps streamline and speed up your backups. We also support Proxmox version 9, which is what we are running here. And so that is some of the bigger features of this release. We have some other ones like Ukrainian translations are now available. You can now do a sandbox restore of Linux for Linux. So I love backing up Linux. I'm a Linux user and an Apple user. Don't tell anyone. But I like using a lot of Linux. So we have a lot of servers here. And then there's just some other kind of quality of life improvements as well, running multiple commands for program output, adding some additional APIs, custom backup job tags. You can now configure change block tracking on the desktop app. And so just to kind of summarize how it works, what you do is if you have a VM or any type of a node or a proxy node, as I like to call them, all you have to do is make sure that that node, that endpoint can see your Proxmox web interface. And then you just have to pass the credentials to it, and then it will back up the data. So like for me, I'm running an Ubuntu server. Oh, excuse me. One second here. I'm running an Ubuntu server headless on my Proxmox cluster. I use that. I install the Magnus Box backup app on it, and then I use that to connect into the same VLAN and run the backups for Proxmox. And so I have an on-site and an off-site backup happening every day for all my VMs. And then that way I always have a local copy and a cloud copy. Plus, it doesn't look good if your Proxmox node's in the data center with your storage that you're using on-prem. So I got to make sure I get that data off-site as well. What could go wrong, right, Luke?
Yeah, nothing, I bet.
Nothing. But yeah, lots of great features. Proxmox, this whole entire quarterly update is about Proxmox, and there's a lot of great features coming later this year. There's gonna be some more in-depth integrations into some platforms that you're using. And so there's a lot coming this year. We'll have 3 more quarterly releases this year. And we're definitely excited to push this out to the Magnus Box partners and the Magnus Box network. So just to cover pricing, we were not billing any users that were beta testing Proxmox backups. Starting not this month's billing cycle, but when we bill for next month, so for March 1st usage, we're going to be sending out a notice to partners that there's going to be a pricing change because we have to charge for Proxmox backups. I believe we're landing on $5 for a virtual machine on Proxmox and $3 for every container that you have on Proxmox. And so we're going to update our pricing sheet. I think I got the pricing right there, right, Luke?
That's right. That does sound right.
Sometimes I gotta have Luke fact check me just to make sure I'm right, because we get talking and sometimes we change things and I forget about it. So pricing sheet's going to be getting updated. We're going to be pushing out an email to our Magnus Box partners and updating our public pricing sheets as well. As always, if you have questions or would like to try out the new Proxmox backups, reach out to us. We're more than happy to get you started by going to magnusbox.com. Luke will be dropping a QR code in the on the screen here a little bit later towards the end, or if you want to sign up for a 14-day trial. Beautiful thing about Magnus Box, we don't have contracts. We're per device pricing, and you get us. I mean, we are more than happy to help you set up your backups, help you guide you through the onboarding process as much or as little as you want us involved. So that's one of the benefits, is that we are an MSP who supports MSPs as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as Mike mentioned, I'll go ahead and put it up here now. And so if you scan this QR code here, you can access or it'll take you right to where to sign up for a test drive. And actually, since Mike has the website up, you can even see where to go if you're on our website at magnusbox.com. You just go ahead and click the top right hand red button and obviously put in all my information. Obviously you do want to put in your own so you can access it, but yeah, I mean, it's really easy. We're here to help if you need it, and we're also willing to stay hands off if you rather decide to just kind of take it on your own and don't want to do a demo or anything, but we're always happy to help set up your dashboard if you need help getting a backup, learning more about the platform and how to actually use it. Because if you're not familiar with Magnus Box or Comment, you might not know how. And just making sure you have all the best practices, making sure that kind of almost asking us for advice, making sure that we have things set up correctly, and that can really be helpful for someone who's not familiar with the system.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there's some vendors who we've seen it before where they're just like, here you go, thanks for signing up, you're on your own. We're more hands-on, or we can just we can send you the guides and you can do it yourself. But we can send PowerShell scripts, we can automate your deployments, we can streamline a lot of your backup your onboarding processes, and make make everything more efficient for you as well. So I'm definitely interested. So Proxmox is available. It's in general availability, and we can't wait to see how many people onboard. I know I'm using it. I've been using it in the beta. It's definitely been nice for us because I didn't really have a backup method other than using the on-site Proxmox backup manager node. So this gives you another avenue, another tool to help secure your clients. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, when I'm deploying a Windows server now, I install Proxmox as the base bare metal OS, and then I virtualize the server, the Proxmox backup software for Magnus Box, and then it just makes life easier. If there is a hardware failure, you can just move that VM. And the best part is like, Magnus Box supports Hyper-V, VMware, and Proxmox. And the beautiful thing is that you can take a VM from either hypervisor and move it to another one. It's kind of one of those added benefits that we don't really advertise. It's not meant to be a migration tool, but it can be a migration tool to move between hypervisors. I know a lot of people are running or offboarding from Broadcom and VMware right now with the pricing increases. I mean, we see it all the time. And so just being able to have a way to help facilitate that, because I mean, there are manual ways to migrate, but I mean, just so you can just do a backup and a restore with Magnus Box, I mean, and hit the ground running.
Right, exactly. Like Mike said, it's not necessarily the intended use case, but of course it works. It's just like a standard backup and restore. So, I mean, if anything at all, at least get you a test restore to make sure everything's working properly, all your backups are configured at the very least. So yeah, if you're looking to get away from VMware or any other VM hypervisor, it's obviously a tool that you can use. So definitely recommend trying that out and trying out Proxmox backups.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm excited. We're going to be pushing it out, and then, just reach out if you have any questions. Something that we're going to be posting in our Magnus Box partner group later is we're going to kind of see what everyone's doing this year for trade shows. I know there's a lot out in the industry. We're hoping to get some partners' feedback to see where we can meet up with some people this year, get together. We met a lot of our partners last year at ScaleCon. Got to have a great time with Tahir and Nigel, Shoeless Nigel on stage, just because that's the culture where he's from. A great time. And we posted a video to our YouTube channel where Luke and I got to go on stage and talk with Tahir and just thank everyone. So definitely looking at our calendar for this year to see what kind of trade shows we'll be going to, what we'll be sending Luke to. Trying to find the craziest place I can send him. Yeah.
I don't know if anything could beat Las Vegas.
That's
or
true.
New Orleans is a little crazy too.
We don't talk about NOLA.
That's all
for everyone that doesn't know, and I had to look this up, NOLA is New Orleans, Louisiana. So when I say NOLA, that's what I meant. But Luke, is there anything else we need to cover today in our stream here?
Not much. Like I said, if you're not a partner currently, feel free to scan this QR code or go to magnusbox.com/test-drive. That will get you signed up there. If you are a partner or are maybe having trouble with some stuff, feel free to give us an email at support@magnusbox.com as well, or a phone call at 888-933-2975. It'll probably be Mike or I answering. So if you want to give us a call right now, feel free, and one of us will have to take off the stream here. And if you want to contact each one of us directly, this is Mike's email. Feel free to sign them up for any free trials that you need to get access to. Like at magnusbox.com, and then mine is just Luke at magnusbox.com. So I guess for me, thanks for joining, and unless Mike has anything else to add, it was nice getting to talk to everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have an amazing day. Stay warm, stay safe, and we will see you next month for our next Fireside Chat. Have a great day.